I threw eggs from the 16th floor of my apartment to maintain peace and quiet. I used to live on the 16th floor of an apartment building. There was a pub on the ground floor, and people would often congregate late at night in the street in front of the pub entrance. This was a hindrance to residents because we would wake up at 1 or 2 in the morning to drunk people talking outside. My apartment had 2 balconies on 2 sides of the building, so I often looked down on people grouping together on both sides of the building. I got fed up with it and decided to drop an egg where a group of people were chatting. They immediately dispersed and I could enjoy my sleep again. I did this on another occasion, and again it worked. I started buying more eggs, and it became a habit that I practiced for about 6 months. No one had a clue it was me, and I even went to the pub and overheard people chatting about eggs being dropped from balconies in the building. Needless to say, I used to maintain peace and quiet by dropping eggs from my balconies. I have nearly gotten water dumped on me outside a bar underneath some apartments. Let's hope it was just water. That would be lol. I moved into an apartment above a bar, then was annoyed it was loud. When the police won't enforce late night noise ordinances, the Eggman restores law and order. I tried to miscarry my baby and hurt her permanently. When I was 15, I got myself pregnant unintentionally. I was a very promiscuous, horny teenager and wasn't exactly safe about it. Sometimes I used condoms, sometimes I didn't. I got really worried when I started experiencing the usual symptoms of morning headaches and nausea and skipped my period. So I took a pregnancy test, and what I feared was true. I was pregnant. I had no idea how to react to this. For one, I was utterly terrified and I wanted to get rid of it. In a way, it felt parasitic, the thing inside me with the power to frick up my life. I have a very Christian parents who would have disowned me for having an abortion, but I knew they would actually love to raise this kid. However, I hated the idea. I had problems with eating at the time and didn't want to gain the pregnancy weight, and I just didn't want a child. I guess I'm making excuses even now. I started a smoking habit very promptly since I heard in science lessons that one of the effects of smoking can be miscarriage. I barely ate at all, and if I did, I threw it up in hopes of starving it as if I was trying to get rid of a fever. It didn't work. I gave birth to her far too early, and as a result, she is blind. I gave her away and haven't heard from her since. She's 8 by now. My parents were surprisingly supportive, and I got the help I needed for my eating disorder, and I still go to regular therapy. I just had to get it off my chest. And this is why we need better sex ed, along with easy access to contraceptives and an undeniable right to choose. And this is why we need safe abortions. This is an excellent example of why you shouldn't be so strict on your kids that they feel that they can't come to you with anything. I guess I am my brother's keeper. I used to watch over my little brother, who at the time we didn't know had Asperger's. When he was at school, kids would always pick on him when he came home with bruises. I ditched school, I was in high school and he was in middle school, and snuck onto campus during recess and lunchtime, but always stayed a ways away. I saw some little hat push my brother down and watched as he got back up, picked up his books and walked away, even though the boy was following him and smacking the back of his head. After my brother made it to the classroom, I ran up, grabbed the kid by the back of the neck, and without thinking, headbutted him. Once he started to cry, I pulled him in and told him that if he ever lays a hand on that little boy again, I'd break every last one of his sad little bones. I never told anyone about doing that. After school, I watched my brother begin to walk home, and the little friend walked up to him, yelled something about some dumb older girl. I can only assume he meant me, and he pushed my brother into the street, and a car had to slam on its brake to avoid hitting him. At that point, I lost it. I pulled my brother onto the sidewalk and made sure he was okay, and I told him not to move. I ran over to the little I didn't care that he was younger, not one bit. Grabbed him by his hair and yanked him to the ground and started beating the ever-loving crap out of him. At some point, I broke his arm. The driver of the car that almost hit my brother had called the police and pulled me off of him, but backed me up 100% and told the officer the truth about what he saw. I got insanely lucky. The police officer told me he has a little sister with autism, and he probably would have done the same thing. Didn't even get punished in the slightest, was just told to take my brother home and to promise never to hit anyone again. The best I could give was to never get caught hitting anyone again. We stopped by the 7-Eleven on the way home, and I got us both some ice cream. I don't know if he remembers that day now, but I'd still do it all over again in a heartbeat. You did the right thing. I can't think of anything better to do than that. This one feels like one of those stereotypical bully situations you see in movies, but this one had a much better outcome, and justice was actually served. The kid wouldn't have stopped if you didn't step in, so kudos. I framed my mother's ex-husband when I was 5. So for a little background, my mom's ex-husband was a jerk. Later on in life, I found out that he was even worse than I thought, but even to 5-year-old me, he was a jerk. For example, there was one summer where he spent all of our money, meaning his and the money from the 3 jobs my mom worked at the time, on cigarettes and booze and other dumb stuff, leading to me and my sister having to spend the summer at my grandma's house because there was literally no food in the house and my mom had to live off of bread and butter for about 3 months. He was that kind of guy. So when I was a kid, I always got up much earlier than everyone else. I can't remember why, but it was probably just so I could watch cartoons in peace. One morning, I went into the living room and found this dude's pocket knife on the couch. It was closed, but I got curious. I opened it and I was playing with it when I had the thought. Obviously, I can't remember the actual train of thought, but it led to me deciding to cut my hand right in the center of my palm so that mom would be mad at Meathead McDonald. I immediately started bleeding, and a lot. Now I know that I bled so much because I have a blood clotting disorder, yay me. I started screaming, mom came down the stairs along with wipe, and they saw what happened. I told mom that he had let the knife open on the couch arm, and I had put my hand down on accident. This led to one of their biggest fights, with mom saying that he was endangering me, and micro saying he swore he didn't leave it open. So yeah, I still have that lovely scar in the middle of my hand to remind me that I was more of an evil genius when I was a child than I ever will be again. Fun. I love how in every paragraph you have a different name for him. Your hatred for this man is so great, you have to make a new name for every time. Poetic. He did leave a knife out where a 5-year-old could get it. This did endanger you. You single-handedly, sorry about the pun, won your mother's custody over you when you were 5, and before the divorce even started. You evil mastermind. Bro is a genius at 5. Bro knows what's good. I used to eat my coworker's apple chips at work, then tell him I was allergic to apples so he wouldn't accuse me. Well, this guy just seems kind of like a jerk. Just to be clear, this wasn't because I was particularly hungry, it's because my coworker was an absolute a-hole. He was really creepy towards the girls in the office. Immediately I take back what I just said about him being a jerk. Good for them. And always said some pretty weirdly racist stuff to our other coworker who was from Mexico. He was just a crude, horribly annoying person who seemingly took enjoyment out of making everyone around him uncomfortable. He was like a mix of Todd Packer from The Office and Tony Soprano. He always brought these apple chips into work to eat for lunch, and occasionally I would go in, take the apple chips, and go to the nearby park and eat them for lunch. He would go around asking if anyone took the chips and would act all pissed off because he knew someone took them. Instead of just flat out telling him I'm allergic to apples, I put on a little show. He was eating his chips 2 days before, and I started to take them, and I asked if I could have one, and I took one and almost took a bite, and then he said, "These aren't apple flavored, are they?" And he said they were, and then I quickly put it back on the plate and went to go wash my hands because I said I was allergic. Much more believable than me just flat out telling him. This went on for about 2 months, and I must have taken his chips like 10 times or so. 2000 IQ. You're living in 3019. You deserve a round of applause. Hey, you know what? I said that you were being a jerk. I lied. I apologize. That guy who's being weird to girls and racist deserves to have his apple chips eaten, at the very least. I took a dump in a mason jar and left it in my friend's pantry. About 13 years ago, my 19-year-old self was partying at a friend's house, and there was a good 20 to 25 people packed inside this 1,000 square foot house. I had been drinking Mike's Hard Lemonade and tampon blender benders all night long. Full disclosure, I have an allergy involving certain alcohols that can cause severe hives, swollen throat, and intense diarrhea. I was 19 and stupid. Anyways, I was chatting with my gal pal at the time and felt the inevitable groan on my stomach. Ah, crap, I thought, figuratively and literally. I asked where the bathroom was, and she pointed down the hall. I squeezed myself through the teenage crowd only to find a ridiculously long line of women waiting to use the toilet. My bowels were screaming. The cramps were intensifying. I recalled seeing a toilet closet in the basement of the house once before and decided to take my chances. I darted down the stairs, all while puckering my pooper with all the strength in me. It was dark, so I flipped the light switch and saw the porcelain throne glowing in the corner of the room. I slammed the door behind me and shoved my pants down around my ankles. I make a swift penguin waddle over to the toilet. To my surprise, the toilet isn't connected to the plumbing, it's just sitting in the corner of the room. A failed attempt at a bathroom remodel. I put myself in a perilous poo position with no escape. People saw me come down here, and there's no way I could go poo in the toilet and get away with it. But now, my ass was on fire and I could barely hold it much longer. I panicked. I scanned the room and noticed an open mason jar filled with potpourri with a lid lying beside it on a shelf. My mind was weighed up. I snatched the mason jar from the shelf and promptly dumped the potpourri into the empty toilet bowl. Ever so carefully, I placed the mason jar on the floor of the bathroom and popped a squat over it, spreading my cheeks, and with surgical precision, shat my brains out in the jar. I filled that sucker to the brim. I released the crack into size and never felt such relief before in my life. But what now? What do I do now? I can't leave it here. I hear my friends calling me from upstairs that they were wanting to leave. I needed an escape plan now. Quickly, I pulled up my pants. Wiping was not an option, but I'd pinched off like 99% of my crap, so it was clean enough, and I placed the lid on the mason jar. It was warm. So warm. Still unsure of what to do next. I hid the jar under my hoodie and exited the bathroom as if nothing happened. "What were you doing down there?" my friend asked. "Just freshening up," I said in absolute horror that she may notice my mason jar smuggling. "Hurry up, we're all in the kitchen waiting to leave," she barks. I swim through the crowd of people to the kitchen to meet my friends. They're all crowded around the pantry door, which was next to the garage. "There you are," they holler as they open the door to the garage. "Here's my chance." The door to the garage was blocking the visual to the pantry. I did it. I slid the smuggled poop jar out from under my sweater and placed it next to the identical jars in the pantry and promptly left. To this day, I wonder with so much wonderment that I wonder how I've never been caught. Did they ever locate this jar and open it? Was it assumed beef stew? Was it tasted? I'm good. Smelled? Tossed? I regret this, but I was desperate. This is my poofession. Somewhere at some time on Reddit, someone is sharing the discovery of that poop jar. I hope these stories will find their way to each other. That jar might have exploded, especially if it got hot outside. Poop creates methane gas, and you might have poop bombed their pantry. I knowingly stuck a booger to my boss's hand and let a customer get blamed for it. A few years ago, I was a salesman for a tool company, and as I'm sure you all know, salespeople shake hands all the time when closing a deal. One day on my lunch break, I was sitting in my car eating a salad, and for some reason, I felt like a hard, dried snot stuck in my nostril. So obviously, I didn't think anybody was around or watching me, so I went and dug for gold. Well, as soon as I pulled the giant flaky booger with a snail trail of slime on it, my boss, who had just got back from vacation, and bops the hood of my car and reaches in for a handshake. I kind of panicked and just shook his hand. We talked for a few about his vacation, and then he saw somebody walk into the showroom, so he went in the building. I finished up lunch and headed back into work. I punched back in and hear from the showroom, "What the frick?" And then I hear gagging and coughing. My boss is holding his hand away like it's a dirty diaper. He's dry heaving and he says, "That guy just wiped a frickin' screaming booger on me. And I look across the room and see this old guy standing there in total disbelief, and he let my boss have it. He's telling my boss that he's never coming back, told him to stop picking his nose like a window licker, and a few other colorful sentences. My boss kicks him out. While this whole thing is going down, all I can think to myself is, holy crap, I got away with it. I just drove by my old work and thought about that time and figured it was time to confess. This is quality content right here. That's it, you're going to hell. Hope you pack your bags, lol. You might think this is a good confession, but it's snot. I ordered $80 worth of pizza for a non-existent client. It was a family business and they were very mean and have no patience. I ordered a delivery, it came 1 hour later in cold. Called him out about it. Dude got mad, started yelling, and refused to take it back. He threw the change at me and stormed away. I called his father, the pizza owner, to complain, and he told me that his kid don't get mad if he wasn't right, and he told me to put the pizza in the microwave and hung up. I was mad AF. I decided to wait until I cool off and think about what to do. So the next morning, I called the pizza from a phone booth and ordered almost $80 worth of pizza. I gave them the address of the apartment next to me, which was empty. I turned off my TV so I can hear him coming. He came more than an hour later and started knocking on the door. Of course, no one responded. He insisted by knocking loudly. So I opened my door and see him with a ton of pizza. I just laughed and closed my door. He automatically knew it was me, but couldn't prove it. I could hear him yelling, insulting while leaving the building. That day was satisfying AF. I ordered Domino's to celebrate. You should have been eating Domino's pizza when you opened the door to look at him, but awesome either way. Gotta love the petty revenge in this one. +1 for opening the door to watch him steam. You're kind. I would have kept on doing that constantly until it affected the way they treated all their customers, thus putting them out of business. How's a small business pizza place gonna have that kind of attitude for customers? Like, unfortunately, you kind of would expect it from a bigger chain who, they have plenty of money and don't care. But the small places, I don't know, man. How are places like that still in business? I stole a book from the library page by page, then glued the pieces together at home. I was about 10 and I was addicted to reading encyclopedias. I could spend hours learning about all sorts of stuff, staring at the illustrations and photos, and of course smelling the books. Smelling? However, I could get my fix at my local library only as my parents could barely afford food for us, let alone buying fancy books. So I became a regular guest at the kids/teenagers section of the library. One day I couldn't get there in time, so I only had about half an hour to spend before closing time. Not just that, but they also had a brand new 400-page encyclopedia waiting for me on the shelf. It was love at first sight. I felt awful because I knew that I couldn't do much reading in such little time, and then there was this lovely smelling book with a montage of astronauts, cars, and magnificent landscapes on the cover, just begging me to read it. But sadly, books like those were not borrowable and time was ticking. I thought about taking it, but it was just enormous and I wasn't. I wasn't a bad boy either, I told myself, but what if I just take a few pages? That surely won't hurt anyone and no one will notice. That's what I did. The book was binded in a way that I could carefully rip out about 5 pages out in one go. I wrapped the pages around my foot, slipped them in my socks, covered my socks with my pants, and I just casually walked out. The first time I actually said thank you very much with a big smile to the librarian, and she gave me that awkward, what the heck are you talking about look. My 10-year-old mind quickly realized how stupid I was to say that, and I, maybe even my parents, could be in jail for this. So I just rushed out, sweating, and with my heart jumping out of my chest. Originally, I wanted to return the pages at the next visit to the library, but I was sitting on my bed at home, reading about the wildlife in Africa, the only content I got at the time. I came up with the master plan of repeating the process until I got every page, and the plan was working. Not just that, but I improved on the technique. I wrapped pages around my feet, around my arms, I had to wear long sleeves for that, and also kept a stack on my back, tucked carefully in my pants. I can get about 20 to 25 pages in just one day, and I remember walking slowly like a robot on my way out, as I didn't want to crush the pages too much. I couldn't bend in any direction because the pages were holding my limbs tight. After several visits to the library, the encyclopedia began to visibly shrink, so I got some paper from the photocopy room and replaced the missing pages with blank ones. My last visit was the sketchiest because I had to take the trophy somehow. By trophy, I mean the hardcover with the astronauts on it. There was no way to wrap it like I did with the other pages, and it was too big to hide it anywhere on me. But I was so close to the victory and I couldn't let it go. I had the shiny cover in its full glory in my hand. I put it under my t-shirt, on my back, hands in my pockets, trying to hold the cover with my elbows. I was scared to the bone that they will catch me and send me to jail. I checked my reflection in the window, but it looked like a terrifying Lady Gaga with a fake shoulder pad. But I was also shameless by this time, and I knew I was an awful person. It was nearly 5 o'clock, and every library goer left. The librarians were doing their closing up routine, so the front desk was abandoned. I just walked out without anyone noticing me. I glued all the pages and the cover together at home. The book was nowhere near as majestic as before, but I loved it anyway. I have never stolen anything else in my life, and I'm so sorry for this. Later heists include stealing the Mona Lisa in a similar way, yes? In a similar way? I don't know about that one. God dang, dude, that's a hella plan for a young child. Steal the moon! I stole a girl's iPod Touch and then sold it back to her a month later. It's 2011, I'm in year 7, it's my first year in high school, and I got sent somewhere where I literally only knew one person, and we never spoke. A few months into the year, I'm sitting in math class, and this one girl who I just could not stand, and who also bullied me on and off, kept just interrupting for the stupidest of things and just generally kept getting on my nerves the whole lesson. Partway through the lesson, the teacher tells us to leave our things in the classroom so we can go to the computer lab, and I was the last to leave the classroom. Note that most kids hid their iPods under their pencil cases during class so they can get away with using it, and I knew for a fact she'd left it there. I don't know what possessed me to steal her iPod, but I did, and she never found out. But now I leave school. The iPod is still in my shorts pockets, but nobody knows what I've done. The girl thinks one of the guys was screwing with her and doesn't suspect me at all. Now, the one defining feature of her iPod was that the back was completely covered in small circle stickers. Once it had gotten so worn down, they'd almost fused with the device. So I did what I could and scrubbed those frickers off until it looked brand new. I didn't use it at all in fear from my mom seeing it and screaming at me for being a thief. So I just sat in my room gathering dust. Until about a month later, I overhear her asking some people if they know about anyone selling an iPod. 1 week later, and I made $150 by selling a girl her own iPod that had just been factory reset and scrubbed down. Now that is what we call a pro gamer move. Serial number would have been the same, too bad she didn't notice. Oh, aren't you frickin' fun at parties, Knack74? Actually, the serial number's the same. Shut up! It was funny. My friend and I lowered our GPA and broke into the teacher's lounge because we were thirsty. I really like soda, and around 5 years ago, my friend and I were high school freshmen. We were really poor, but we still both would scrounge up change to buy a soda every now and then. The recent healthy lifestyle thing schools were doing, all the soda vending machines were removed. For a while, we were really upset. However, I walked by a teacher's lounge one day while a teacher had the door open and saw that there was a Coke vending machine still in there. Not only that, but the price for a single bottle was only 50 cents. That was an outright steal to us. We knew we had to get in there. The problem was the door was constantly locked. We began creating our plan. During lunch hour, we scoped out the normal high school building. Since it was lunch, all students were required to be in the cafeteria. However, we knew a way to have access to the building was to get lunch detention. Kids in detention were released 20 minutes late for lunch. The easiest way to do that was to not turn in biology worksheets. 3 zeros in biology and a few late lunches later, we found out that one of the teachers would leave a key in the door for easy access. On the 4th day, we put our plan into action. B would watch the door as I slipped into the lounge after teachers had gotten their lunch, and I made my way to the machine with $1 in quarters. On the way, I noticed a bowl in the corner labeled Soda Fund with lots of change and dollar bills inside. Bree took over me that day, and we ran out of the school with 3 sodas each. We did this at least 4 more times through the semester. We had to stop after the school installed security cameras, and eventually the cheap soda machine was removed. Overall, our average biology score dropped nearly 15 points, but the sodas tasted really good. Reading this was like watching a heist movie. I thought you meant thirsty as in horny. Bro? What? A small price to pay for satiation. I forged Good Charlotte's signature for a Nintendo. When I was 8, there was a boy in my 3rd grade class who was obsessed with the band Good Charlotte, and he had this blue Nintendo Game Boy that I've been eyeing for a while, and I decided to propose a trade. I told him that I actually knew Benji and Joe Madden, lead singers of the band, and I had their autographs. I told him I traded the autographs for his Game Boy, and he enthusiastically agreed. I went home and spent a good 20 to 30 minutes with my next door neighbor forging their signatures. After we agreed on one, we used her parents' lamination machine to make it really legit. The next day, he handed over his Game Boy in return for the fake autographs. A week later, my little brother was playing with the Game Boy and dropped it in the bathtub. Well, karma, I guess. Benji and Cameron are regulars of mine at my coffee shop. I'm excited to tell them this story. I'll send you a Game Boy if you get me their autograph. Heist of the century. You did that at 8? You deserve the Game Boy, you creative bastard. Son, I've been reading your Reddit posts. Son, you just graduated with top grades from a tough engineering program, and you've got your dream job lined up. So I thought it was time I fessed up. I've been reading your Reddit posts since you were a sophomore in high school. I know you think I don't even know what Reddit is. I may be over 50, but as you're learning, parents aren't really that oblivious. The Secret Santa gift you received years ago that you thought I didn't notice showed your account name. Ever since I watched your account, so when I saw some comment about being down or unhappy, Mom and I tried harder to make sure you knew we loved you, and we're sure everything would work out. Teenage years can be tough. I'm proud of what you've accomplished and see the mature, confident, capable young man you've become. So no need to change your account name now. I don't feel the need to watch over you in the same way I did years ago, and I promise to stop reading your posts. So what weird plan is your son into? Dad invades his son privacy. Then his story invades my heart. Mad tears, bro. That's a heartwarming invasion of privacy. I don't know whether you're an awesome dad or a huge d***. I used to throw out food, so Mom had to cook again. When I was a kid, I used to live alone with my mother. She always cooked more than necessary at lunch, so she don't need to cook again for dinner. Food usually was enough even for the next day lunch, and I hated this. In my mind, there was no need for that. She was just lazy. I threw out the food, so she had to cook a new one. This lasts for a month or so. Obviously, she realized what I was doing, but never said a word. She just took the hint and cooked less. Looking back, she was so busy. Single mother having to take care of a child and work at the same time. Honestly, this is not something I cared that much until last week when she died and everything came back. All that stuff that I've done in the past that made our life difficult. If it had been more than a mild inconvenience, I'm sure she would have said something about it. You were a child. Find comfort in knowing that these were things she would laugh about when sharing with friends and family and coworkers. Sheesh. I don't feel like cooking 80% of the time. Lamau. I stopped attending a class, lied about turning in the final, and still passed. Back in my junior year of college, I took a class with a professor that I really did not like. He was so disorganized, absent-minded, and really didn't teach anything. The kind of professor that tells you to watch YouTube videos instead of actually teaching you the subject. It took him weeks to grade anything, and I don't even think he read them. It seemed like he was just coasting until retirement. Anyway, I flew out to see my grandma 1 week for her 90th birthday, and I missed a few classes and missed a few YouTube lessons. Well, the following week, my grandma passed, so I flew back out for her funeral, in turn missing a few more classes. I was really far behind and really had no clue what we were working on, flunked the midterm, and missed the big project. At this point, I just gave up and reserved myself to failure and retake it in the summer, and I didn't show up to any other classes. At the end of the semester, he emailed me regarding the final project and final test. He congratulated me on a great job with the group project. Really weird since I hadn't been to class in months and he was definitely not part of the group project. He was also wondering if I had turned in the final paper. I emailed him back and told him how happy I was that he enjoyed the project and I had definitely turned in the paper. Well, I don't know if he wanted to cover his tracks and pretend he didn't lose my test or whether he didn't give a crap about it, but when I checked my final grade for the semester, I had passed with a high C. I do not regret it at all. He was a horrible professor and a total slob. Freaking amazing. C's get degrees, even from slobs on the job. Deception 100. Bro didn't even try. Bro didn't even try to deceive. I went off on a homeless person and I'm not sure if I should feel bad. So I just graduated this year as a nurse and got a job working at my local hospital. On my walk to the hospital, I pass the same homeless person every morning. He has a camp set up. Sometimes he's minding his business and sometimes he asks me for money and I say no, sorry. Well, this morning he asked me for money again, but this time with more aggression in his voice and I said no. Walking past him, he proceeded to throw an empty bottle of Coca-Cola at my legs and then his dirty blanket, which he missed, and proceeded to scream something like, "You're a doctor, you can afford my food, yet you don't give me stuff." I stopped in shock at this point, but something overcame me, to which I replied, "I just graduated with a nursing degree. I have almost 6 figures in freaking debt. I don't owe you or the likes of you anything, while you lay in your own piss all day, beg for money just to do a bump, and wait to die. Get a job." He didn't say anything back, but I immediately started walking during my last few words. I felt like some rage came about me, and I never took myself as the person to speak that way. I honestly don't know if I should feel bad. Nurse outside my work got decked by a homeless person for saying nothing at all. Stay safe. My boyfriend encountered an aggressive homeless man while driving home from work years ago. The guy was adamant about getting a ride even after my boyfriend politely refused him multiple times. This light bulb of a human proceeded to spit in his face, and my boyfriend, who was never violent, punched him almost immediately. Guy deserved it for sure. I see nothing wrong with this. The moment he lashed out at you for his problems, he deserved to hear that everybody has them. Homeless people are people too, and people can be assholes. I don't think you need to feel bad. Someone threw something at you and they were aggressive. Your reaction was totally justified in my book. Not that you need any validation from me. He lashed out at you, you lashed out at him. You could have been the bigger person, used better phrasing, but hey, this guy literally threw stuff at you. Nobody's perfect and you can't be empathetic 100% 24/7. I get a huge kick out of paying for people's stuff when they can't. Yesterday, a young guy ahead of me in the grocery store had about 92 sec worth of groceries and he'd forgot his card. I broke out my card and paid for his stuff, even over his objections. He wanted to pay me back, but I just told him not to worry about it, just do something nice for someone in the future. A few years ago, my wife and I were at Costco and the young couple ahead of us were trying to use EBT to pay for their groceries. But Costco didn't take EBT, so my wife and I offered to pay for their entire order. It was almost $400. I didn't hesitate and it felt so good to be able to do that. We're not a wealthy family, but we are better off than some, and it just seems insane to not help people in those moments, especially considering that I know full well how embarrassing it is to rock up to the grocery store clerk and not have the money to pay for things. I've had a few more experiences like that and I actively hope for more, just for the serotonin hit I get from helping people. I completely get this. I'm not wealthy, but I've worked in the airline industry for years and I've always collected a huge number of air miles, etc., with all the various airlines and alliances. It can be a very boring, lonely existence, but every one of the biggest buzzes I've had come from giving someone a flight or upgrade when they didn't ask for or expect it. These are things I could never afford to do with cash, but it's been no bother at all to me to just use points to put a smile on someone's face. Good for you for paying some good forward. If you're genuine, it's a lovely thing, and thanks for not wanting to be buried in the ground with your gold. I had a homeless guy outside of Goodwill ask if I can buy him clothing. I was like, hell yeah, come on and pick what you want. Spent about $40 on him. He got pants, 2 shirts, a hat, and a backpack. I tried getting socks, but they had none. Cool thing to help out rather than give out money. When I was making good money, I would bless a small amount of people on Facebook. I wouldn't give them money, but if they needed diapers or a bill paid, I would call and pay it, or I'd send gift cards to grocery stores if I could. It actually got to be great that I started having people donate to be able to help. I've been in those situations where it's been pay for this bill and be without food for a week, or pay for groceries and not have electricity or water for a week. When I'm back on my feet, I will be doing it again. It's fun. One of the most attractive things about my boyfriend is he's always buying other people's dinner, and he asks that they not be told until after we're gone. One of my favorite memories was being in line at a clothing boutique behind a woman who was paying on her layaway items. Once she left, I paid it off. I ate a whole family-sized cake in the parking lot. I was 8 months pregnant and I had this insane craving for chocolate cake, so I went to buy one. As soon as I got in the car, I knew I couldn't wait to get home. I got the cake and sat in the back seat so no one would see me. There I sat eating an entire family-sized chocolate cake with my hands. I don't know what came over me. This was almost a year ago now, and I still haven't told another soul soul. Thank you. That is all. You got that vitamin chocolate you needed. My only negative thought is how messy. I wish you had a fork. You didn't sit in the back with the cake because you didn't want to be seen. You sat in the back because you didn't want to share. I bet you and the baby enjoyed it thoroughly, but I hope you got some milk too. Life is hard. Eat the damn cake. I'm 5'0" and on the thin side, but binge eat on my occasion, and my family has held 2 interventions fearing I'm bulimic because nobody can eat that much and keep it down or gain weight. The f*** I can't, Doris. When I was really depressed, I would eat an entire pizza by myself. Don't feel bad about it. Usually when people crave chocolate, it's because the body is looking for more magnesium. OMG, chocolate is my #1 lifelong craving. All day, every day, but since getting pregnant, my doctor put me on a magnesium supplement, and the craving has significantly died down. I was just telling my husband how weird it is that I'm craving vanilla cake, because usually I only eat chocolate, but I just really want vanilla, and plain vanilla sugar cookies. I'm a chocolate chip cookie person, never a sugar cookie person. If we're talking about those crappy grocery store sugar cookies with the cake icing on top that is just disgustingly thick, and they taste like sand, and they come in those plastic containers, those are gross. Disgusting. I unapologetically ignore hints on purpose so people will be direct like an adult, and will continue to do so. Miss me with that BS. Same here. I play completely dumb. It's maddening to feel someone trying to manipulate you to volunteer for something, relying on your good nature. Adults are indirect all the time. We all talk in parables. We all get nervous to say directly what we mean to say, and it doesn't make us immature, and if it does, then a lot of times it can be more of a personality flaw and not representative of everything about who we are as a person. That's something I wish more people would understand about flaws. Now, they're not always indicative of a constant way of going about life, meaning that one immature behavior doesn't mean that every behavior is immature. It's reasonable to want people to be direct with you, but it's a little mean to consciously ignore indirect statements when you know what people are trying to say just because you don't like hints. We all miss hints all the time, by the way, and that's just a part of life. We realize we miss them, and we ask for clarification, or we just make a mistake and it never fully resonates. Either way, there are worse things. What you're doing is fine, but it also seems kind of mean and elitist. Except there are people, like autistic ones, that don't even recognize those said hints. They don't ignore them, they just don't see or understand them to begin with. So yeah, people should be more direct. Throwing hints will just make the situation worse and more confusing. I've always done this. It just bothers me. My sister had a habit of walking into a room, sighing, and then looking at you, so I ignored her. If you have something you want to talk about, just talk. I'm not asking, so you're not alone. I do this at work. I do this when I know people have a problem with me or something I did and gives hints of act passive-aggressive. I'm not going to come to you. I don't have a problem with you. You have a problem with me. My work life is harmonious. Yours are not. I do this when I feel like I'm being manipulated. Also, me. When do I need this by? Them. ASAP. Smile. Lol. So like, when do you need this by? End of the day is fine. I can't stand vagueness. Please just be direct. ASAP means shh. When I have other priorities. Secretly leaving money. My friends are a young couple with a young baby. Money was already tight, and dude lost his job today. I was at their house today, and when they didn't see, I took $50 from my wallet and left it in a place where one of them will find it, and I think, oh cool, I must have forgotten about this. I'll emulate you. That action is worth emulating. I did this with my father after my mom moved out. He worked his off and barely held himself. Me and my brother housed and fed. I started hustling a little bit to make some extra cash for myself, but would hide money in his pocket, car, etc. when I could. I will never forget the face he had when he came home with 3 steaks for dinner and a rental DVD after he found $100 in a winter coat. He was so happy to finally get us something extra. Best steak I ever had. Another thing to help out could be to take note of what diapers they use for their kid and pick some up when you're at the shops next with a, I was at the shop and figured you need these. It's simple and sweet gesture that would probably mean a lot to them. That's really great. Even if they know it's not theirs, they still won't know for certain who left it there. Faith in humanity is slightly restored. You're a great friend. The world needs more people like you. When I was broke, I always fantasized that my friends would do that someday, and as far as I know, they never did. Maybe they were too good at it. Sometimes when I shower, I like to turn the water a bit cold, sit down, and pretend I'm a frog in rain. Sounds fun. Gonna try it next time. Tried this, and it was so relaxing. I wish I was always a frog. Thanks for sharing. This is pretty cute, and also a little strange and embarrassing. Perfect confession, 10 out of 10. I like to put YouTube videos on. Rain on a tent is my fave. Close my eyes and pretend I'm there. Every response to this is liberating. We are all human beings who just want to sit quietly under the shower, pretending we are little moist froggies sitting on a leaf during the tropical monsoon. Thank you, friends. I like to pretend I'm a duck stomping in the rain. I'll give the frog thing a go. Saw a completely different side of the guy I'm dating. My date. He always seems like a calm, composed, focused, serious kind of person. He doesn't post much on social media, doesn't have a large friend circle, doesn't talk too much. A kind of guy you'd think works for some super secret services. We've been on a couple casual dates and he spends good time with me and opens up a little, but I always feel like there is so much that I don't know about him. So this happened yesterday after our third meetup. We went to grab dinner. He wanted to drop me off at my place in his car, but I insisted him to walk me off as the place is pretty close to my apartment. We were walking down the street streets and I noticed a stray kitty and I showed him the cat. He just turned into something I never expected to see. He walked up to the kitty, started petting her, talking to her in a sweet, cute voice. His voice is pretty rough. Looking at him was like seeing a toddler get a toy they've wanted for too long. Seeing him like that was so wholesome that I couldn't stop my tears of happiness. To everyone saying this isn't a confession, is a clickbait, is misleading, etc., it is a confession for me as I can't share this with the people I know and wanted to share an experience I had with others, hence I decided to post it. About the title, it is literally what I experienced, and I had never seen him act that soft and cute, and that is a side of him I'd never seen. I don't know, I don't care, and if it comes out as clickbait because I didn't intend it to be one, thank you. This is definitely went in a much better direction than I thought it was going to. Lol. When a person is kind of animals, that speaks volume in my eyes. Swear you were working your way up to him killing the cat. Jeez. I'm sure I'm paraphrasing, but how we treat the most vulnerable is a measure of our humanity, and I've always believed that. Me halfway through the second paragraph, oh god, please don't say he kicked the cat. Me after finishing, aw, OMG, that's perfect. Most dudes are like this. He's not afraid to show himself to you. Why the fuck is this in confessions and not wholesome, right? Really clickbait too. So what exactly are you confessing? That they need attention. I read my boyfriend's notebook. It's not a diary or anything, it's not hidden, he's just got several notepads lying around the house with lists, song, lyrics, etc. Well, I couldn't resist having a flick through, you know what it is. Then I came to the page which says, you are a beautiful human being, and I'm all the better for knowing you. You are a fucking nosy bastard, though. I am well and truly rumbled. He's not the soppy type at all, unless under the influence, so this is very sweet for him, but I can never confess to him I have seen it. So no, I confess to you. You should leave little notes for him to find around the house. I love when the non-sappy type gets sappy for a second. My partner drew a heart on my dry erase calendar like 2 years ago, and I still to this day haven't erased it. I just don't make plans on the 19th. He already knows. That's why he wrote you're a nosy bastard in it. I'm sure he knows. Right? You too. Right? No, I'm not. Definitely doing this. Thank you. He really nailed you. He seems to know you pretty well too. Today I found out what the weird whispering noise is upstairs. My fiance pretty much always has her headphones in, loves music. She has music quite loud, so she will text me to say that she's got headphones in so that I don't accidentally scare her by creeping up behind her, etc. If I'm going upstairs, I'll call or text her to avoid getting her a heart attack. We've learned from experience. Sometimes though I hear an odd whispering. It's like someone is yelling, but whispery yelling? Aggressive whispering, I guess you could call it. I did the unthinkable and silently crept upstairs to see what she was doing, what the noise was. I found her arm in arm with the cat, holding her outstretched, singing to her, whisper singing, to our cat. I've never seen something so perfect in my life. I feel like I fell in love with her all over again. I love my little family. Not gonna lie, I was expecting something like, I don't know, she really cheated or other really creepy stuff, but this was so wholesome. This is objectively the best story. Something similar happened to me as well. Third day I got my cat. My cat got attached to me and she was giving me cuddles. I was listening to Little Peep on TV and I started singing one of the songs. My cat fell asleep on me. That's so cute. Don't ever let her know though. She might get embarrassed by it. I want a wife like this someday. I'm manifesting it. Got my groceries held hostage because I didn't tip beforehand. I'm done. I use a delivery service that brings my groceries directly to my door. It's been a great help and saves a ton of time. It's a dice roll whenever you get your order though. There are definitely some questionable people doing deliveries and I've had a couple bad experiences, so for that reason, I choose not to tip until after the service is complete. I tip anywhere from 10 to 15%. I think that's reasonable and fair. I usually tip more if I order heavy items like soda or bottled water. Really, I don't think tipping should exist at all. I can't tell you how annoyed I get when I have an iPad shoved in my face by cashiers, people handing you your to-go order, and even the freaking guy that fixed our air conditioning. It's presumptuous and rude. You're getting put in this awkward position where you're expected to subsidize the wages of people who've done the bare minimum in order to fulfill the service I've already paid for. Tips used to be reserved for people that went out of their way to do a great job. Anyway, I opened the door today to a lady with no groceries in hand who instead greeted me abruptly asking if I'm planning on leaving a tip. I told her I tip based on the service I receive, which means I have to tip after she finishes the delivery. This woman loudly sucks her teeth and tells me I'm not getting my order until I give a tip. She's very adamant that I tip her in cash, and I asked her to deliver my groceries first, and she flat out refuses. I just stare at her in shock. We stand in silence awkwardly until I told her that I've already paid for my order and it's her job to make sure I get it regardless of what I tip. Before I can even finish my sentence, this lady walks away, shuts her trunk, and drives off. I spent the next half an hour being bounced around from person to person on the customer service chat, only to be told that I had to call in to resolve the problem. One disgruntled phone call later, and I finally got my refund and my driver reported. I'm done with tipping. I'm so tired of being guilted into paying on top of an already expensive bill just because the owners don't want to pay their workers a decent living. You can call me selfish or rude, but I'm past the point of being moved by social pressure to tip. From now on, I'll be discontinuing all tips. It's not fair to the customer or the employee. It relies on guilt and preys on people's fear of social awkwardness in order to fleece us. We should not be worrying that an employee won't deliver our order or spit in our food if we dare not tip. Prices go up, fine. I want to know exactly what I'm paying for something. No more, not mandatory, but actually mandatory gratuity. If enough of us do it, tipped employees will be motivated to demand compensation from the people who actually should be paying. It's not the customer's responsibility to pay your staff. Damn. Whatever the opinion on tipping or not tipping is, absolutely no way on earth should you have not received the order. This is just straight up the woman not doing the job she gets paid to do. Kroger delivery is awesome, and and they don't accept tips. They come to the door in a refrigerated box truck. All of my groceries have been fresh and delivered without issue. It's not even funny how right you are and how ridiculous tipping has gotten in the US. 100% agreed. Tips must be earned and shouldn't be standard. Business owners are just taking advantage of workers, and customer with his predatory practice. Peace. I had a waitress yank my bill out of my hand to compare with the card terminal receipt. When she saw the numbers were the same, she scoffed at me and threw both slips of paper at me and then walked away. No, I didn't tip her because she got our orders wrong and never checked in with our table. But she visited every other table around us. This was not a teenager either. She was very much a senior. For reference, wait staff here are still paid at least minimum wage, and tipping is above and beyond. Should I ask my math teacher to adopt me? This might be kind of confusing story, and I debated posting this but decided why not. So I am 15 and my math teacher, who I will call V, F35, and her husband is M40. My real parents are, or were, abusive alcoholics and drug addicts. They got arrested last year and was going to enter the foster system, and now I had already told V about my struggles with my parents, and I confided in her about me going into foster care, so I guess she jumped in, and her husband somehow became my foster parents. I absolutely love living with them, and I feel like I have true family for the first time in what feels like forever. I really want to ask them to adopt me, but I'm unsure of it. For one thing, I'm incredibly nervous and very unconfrontational, and second, I know the foster system gives people money to take care of the child, so maybe they would be better off just staying foster parents. Also, they already make quite a bit, as my foster dad is a doctor. I just don't know what to do. Can anyone please give me advice? Even if you don't want to straight up ask them to adopt you, just telling them this, I absolutely love living with them, and I feel like I have true family for the first time in what feels like forever, is going to mean the world to them. Kid, you made a grown man cry. I'm so happy for you that you've been shown so much love that you want them to be your parents. Tell them. They might not be able to for a various amount of reasons, but they'll appreciate it so much. Whether they can adopt you or not, I have a feeling that they'll be with you for life. Math teacher here who adopted a 15-year-old student of mine. 10 out of 10 would recommend. That was 16 years ago, and she's getting married in September. One of my closest sisters isn't blood related. She was our babysitter, and her parents died in a fire. She became a ward of the state and lived with us all through college. My parents never adopted her, and while I'm not sure why, there are many variables, it doesn't matter. She's my sister. My mom introduces her to people as her daughter. My point is, no matter what happens, it doesn't define who your family is or who loves you. Your foster parents sound like amazing people who have shown they're there for you. Good luck, OP. Yes, you can tell them. Regardless of if they do or not, there's nothing wrong with letting them know how you feel. Glad you're doing great. My dad's girlfriend is really cool. I'm a teenage guy, and my dad's girlfriend is honestly the coolest person. For some background, my dad has a job that required him to be away from home for weeks at a time, and he and Mariah, girlfriend, have been together for 7 years. If you're wondering about my mom, she died when I was young. Mariah is really chill about homework and chores. We have lots of things in common. She acts in a motherly way towards me, and she even calls me Honey Bun as my nickname. She's also kind of a fitness nut and likes to work out and do yoga, and she even got me into it too. She makes the best food, and I like cooking with her. She treats my dad like how he deserves, and is literally the sweetest and most loving person in the world. She makes my family feel complete, and she even asked me to walk her down the aisle when she and my dad got married this summer. So at the request of others, I have decided to tell Mariah how much she means to me, and today she made me breakfast, and I told her, Mariah, I know I don't say it a lot, but you mean so much to me, and I think you're the coolest and most kindest person ever, and I love you so much, Mom. She had to stop eating because she started crying, and she hugged me and said that I will always be her boy. On top of that, she revealed that she's pregnant. I'm getting a sibling. She has told my dad, and he's also very excited, but dear God, I am just so freaking excited right now. Thank you so much, everyone who commented. I hope you all have an amazing day. There's a ton of negativity posted here, so refreshing to read something so nice. Being a step-parent takes adjusting. Sounds like you and your dad are very lucky. Lovely to hear, OP. Thanks. This post brightened my day. I don't know why, I read this as my girlfriend's dad is really cool. Makes sense now rereading the post. I'm worried about my comprehension now. I'm so happy there's no dark side. Thank you for sharing this. Man, I've been on the internet way too much. I expected this to go in a very different direction. So glad to hear you have a great relationship with her. Neither of my kids get along with my second wife, and I wish she and they hit it off the way you and your stepmom to be do. I steal hermit crabs from souvenir shops. You know those hermit crabs they sell as pets to tourists in coastal souvenir shops? The ones with shells that have badly painted cartoon characters on them? The ones that come free with the purchase of a little plastic carrier with a thin layer of brightly colored gravel, some flake food, and a shallow water dish with a sea sponge in it? Maybe your parents let you get one while you were on vacation as a child because it's such a simple little pet, and maybe it lived for a few weeks or months or even a couple years in that little plastic box before you noticed a bad smell and found it dead, and maybe you shrugged it off because it's just a little crab, and they don't live long, right? Those crabs have a lifespan of 30 plus years. Those crabs are highly social and need to be kept in groups. Those crabs require air that's around 80% humidity or higher in order to breathe, and kept at around 26 degrees Celsius / 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Those crabs need separate pools of both fresh and salt water using marine aquarium salt that are deep enough to fully submerge themselves in so they can regulate their internal salinity. They need large enclosures with deep substrate to burrow down in so they can molt. They need a varied and nutrient-rich diet with fresh fruit and vegetables. The little crab you got as a souvenir in the same place selling custom airbrush shirts and shark tooth necklaces died a slow and miserable death. It's a miracle it made it that far to begin with, as all the hermit crabs sold in these shops and major pet retailers are collected from the wild. They have their natural shells broken off their bodies with a hammer, so they have no choice but to wear some kitsy garbage with Spider-Man painted on it. Roughly 50% don't survive the process, and no one seems to care. I care. Several years ago, I was in one of those shops and saw hundreds of hermit crabs kept in a bare, unheated open-air cage with only a shallow dish of water. I could smell them before I saw them. Dead little bodies rotting in their shells and limbs strewn about. Children were encouraged to pick them up and play with them and beg their parents for one because they're hardly more complicated than a pet rock, right? If I bought some of them, I could give them a chance to live. But in doing so, I'd be supporting a cruel industry and funding the death of so many more. I'm not sure how long I paced around the shop with my moral dilemma before a sudden realization hit me. I have pockets. As casually as I could, I picked out a couple sickly crabs and gently put them into my pocket. My heart was racing, but no one stopped me when I walked out the door, and so started my life of crime. I don't do it often, but if I'm in town with one of those souvenir shops, I'll pop in and jailbreak a few hermit crabs. I gravitate towards the weak ones and those missing limbs. They're on their way out, but I want them to have a chance, or at least die as comfortably as they can. The ones that have pulled through are all healthy and active now. Colony of contraband crabs. I love the background noise of their shells clacking against their terrarium and each other as they go about their crab business. I'm a little drunk and sentimental tonight, which is my excuse for writing all this. I have a feeling most folks won't care to read it all, but I hope they do, and somehow it'll make a difference. If you made it through my rambling, thanks. May you never be pinched. Yeet them into the ocean like Gob Bluth with the letter while screaming, "Go back to whence you came from!" I don't usually condone thievery, but I can applaud this. Animals are not souvenirs. Guys, it's so true. Animals are not souvenirs. They're animals. They live. They have feelings. They have a brain. Be nice to animals. Treat them well. I got mad at my girlfriend today and opened her MacBook Air I had wrapped under the tree and rewrapped it and addressed it to my son. Girlfriend and I got into an argument over our kid's Christmas spending budget. We both have a kid from a previous relationship, her daughter, and my son. We have an agreed budget of $1,000 for each kid. We have met that budget for both kids last week. Today she tells me she wants to get her daughter a phone and wants to buy her an iPhone XS Max, easily putting her daughter close to $1,200 over our agreed Christmas budget. We have a shared bank account, so it's not quite it's her daughter and her money, so what's the deal kind of thing. We argued for 3 days over the issue. We couldn't afford to spend another $1,200 on my son to even out the budgets again at a ludicrous $2,200 each. My son would have never known if we spent extra money on her, but that's not the point. It's unfair, and in my opinion, it's favoritism. After another very heated argument over the issue, I walked over to the tree, grabbed her present, opened it in front of her, and then rewrapped it and addressed it to my son. Now the budgets are mostly equal again, give or take $100. Merry Christmas, P.S. The MacBook was purchased on my personal credit card, so she wouldn't have known about it. A classic Christmas tale. Is a $1,000 budget for one person's Christmas presents not insane to anyone else? Yeah, it kind of is. I feel like when I was growing up, the most luscious and ludicrous thing I got for Christmas was like the Nintendo DS, which was what, like $150? If that? So, sheesh. Good for them, I guess. I stole my son's teacher's keys. My son has Asperger's, which is like autism light. We've done extensive therapy and intervention, and for the most part, he is no different than any other kid his age, except he comes across as shy and a bit nerdy, saying that with love. The only issue we had at school was that he would become overwhelmed, panic, and run out of the classroom. Of course, that is not okay, and we in school decided to allow him to take quick breaks to decompress when he starts feeling overwhelmed. He has not had an incident since 3rd grade. He started the 6th grade last year, and it's hard for any kid, especially for an Aspies kid. We met with all of his teachers and reminded them that he has this accommodation in writing, and he will likely need to use it since middle school is tough for an Aspie kid. All but one of his teachers understood that and were supportive. His math teacher is just a nasty bitch. She's one of those teachers that should not be a teacher. We're not those crazy in-your-face parents. We just want what's best for our son and work with his teachers do so. We kept on reminding her verbally and in writing, especially as our son's anxiety started to grow around her. Imagine my surprise when I get a call from his counselor telling me to pick my son up. Apparently, he had bolted from her classroom and ran out to the field. Principal and a counselor tried to escort him to the office, and he refused unless they called me, and horrified me because I've seen videos of cops being called and tasering or hitting special needs kids. When I got there, my son was very upset. It was like watching years of progress unravel. Apparently, he started to feel overwhelmed in her class because she's a bitch. She turned on the heat too high and closed all the doors. He felt trapped and claustrophobic. When he asked for a break, she refused and told him to sit down or get detention. That only fueled his anxiety more, and he exploded. The school quickly accepted that the situation was handled poorly by the teacher. I requested that he switch classes and even threatened to get a lawyer for not following the accommodations that they are required by law to follow. That got their attention quickly. They did not send him back to her class. Rather, he went to another class until the matter was resolved. The teacher did get into trouble and wanted to discuss it with us before pulling him out of her class. We met with her, and she was just a nasty bitch. She accused our son of using his diagnosis as a crutch and he needed to grow up. I wanted to slap her. She went to take a phone call and I saw her keys on her desk. I put them in my pocket and we finished our conversation and I politely thanked her for her time. Then I threw her keys in a dumpster and got my son pulled out of her class the next day. That made my day, lol. Look, I don't condone stealing. But if you got a bad teacher who's gonna do that to your son, revenge is a dish best served sweet. I'll just leave it at that. Something scared me and my brother really bad when we were younger, and I'm just now remembering the details. We were watching one of the Garfield movies. I can't remember off the top of my head, and everything was well until the I Feel Good song by James Brown started playing in the movie. Now you may ask, what could have scared you so bad from a song like that? Well, I'll tell you. In the beginning of the song, James Brown does this sort of scream, I guess you could say. Well, me and my brother had no idea that it was part of the song, and we thought the scream came from somewhere in our room. After hearing the scream, we immediately ran to our parents' room and told them that we heard someone scream from inside our room. So my father jumps up and grabs a knife from the kitchen and walks into our room to find nothing in there. So now everyone in the house thinks there's an intruder, so we all go lock ourselves in my parents' bedroom and call the police. Police show up and find nothing. I was watching the movie with my niece the other day and heard that familiar scream and realized that it was only the movie and we'd had called the police for no reason at all. Wow, I feel good. Pack the frickin' bags, Karen, the place is haunted. That's really good. I love that. I insulted a child who I thought was wearing a costume. While waiting outside my kid's school to pick them up, class of middle schoolers walked past. It was close to Halloween. I looked up when a girl with makeup and colored hair called out, "Hi" to me. I was kind of caught off guard, but noticed she was made up for Halloween and guessed she wanted some attention for her costume. I noticed what looked like big teeth and assumed they were fake. Trying to be funny, I said, "Wow, you really need to see a dentist." Almost immediately, I regretted it. I think I heard her mutter, "How rude," and my brain finally caught up and realized her teeth were not fake, but just abnormally prominent. There was nothing I could do at this point. I've seen her once more around the school, but didn't say anything. I can't really say, "Sorry, I thought those were fake costume teeth." That would not help. Now I just feel like an a-hole. I physically cringe every time I think about it. Holy frickin' stuff. Lol, this is probably the worst thing I've read someone confess on this subreddit yet. I'm cringing too. Lol, oof. Your comment may have crushed one soul, but sharing your story on Reddit has lifted many other ones. You really need to see a dentist after eating all this Halloween candy. You could have come back from this. It wasn't Halloween yet. She didn't have all the Halloween candy yet. I don't think that would have worked. We swapped our twin brothers at birth. When I was 11, my mom gave birth to my little brothers, identical twin boys. My sister and I, also identical twins, decided it would be funny to swap them. They had bands on their wrist identifying them, but we were able to ease them off and swap them. We then placed them in each other's cribs. We did it because we thought our parents would realize straight away and laugh since they were able to tell us apart even when we swapped clothes. However, they didn't. A while later, possibly a few weeks to a month, we decided to swap them back because we gradually became scared they'd find out and we'd get into trouble. We swapped their baby grows that had their names on it, but by that time, my mom had gotten used to their faces and individuality and asked what we were playing at swapping their clothes. We never told her that we were actually trying to reverse an original and successful trick because we knew she wouldn't believe us or be furious. So we are the only family members who know that they were swapped and that the eldest is actually the youngest. Only one of our best friends know the truth. They are 16 in December. We plan to tell them one day because they have a right to know, but neither of us have the balls at the moment. Lol. But at this point, who cares? Their names don't matter, their personality does. It's about who's the oldest. Honestly, that's one you should both take to the grave. I can't see any good coming from admitting what you did. Yeah, having to admit that their entire, they're each other? That's messed up. If I had a twin brother that our names got swapped, I'd be mad and I wouldn't forgive them. That's like insane to me. Mother breaks down at dinner and confesses the horrifying truth of the missing bear. This is a confession to me from my mother. So many years ago, I was sat around the dinner table with my mom and she broke down in hysterical laughter, tears and all, and told me she had something to tell me. She couldn't live with the lie anymore. When I was a little girl, I used to have a child-sized bear, originally named Big Bear, who lived under my bed to protect me from monsters, etc. I loved this bear. He was my protector and my best friend. My mom, however, hated this bear. In her mind, he was one of those cheap bears you can win at the fairground stuffed full of straw. But to me, he was perfect. When I was 8 years old, we moved house, and during this move, Big Bear went missing, believed stolen. My parents assured me that they had contacted the police and they were on the case. Eventually, time passed, and I forgot about Big Bear and life moved on. Coincidentally, at the same time of Big Bear's mysterious disappearances, I was in my school play, Teddy Bear's Tea Party, and my role was Teddy Bear number 2. My costume was amazing. It was a handmade, full zip-up teddy bear costume, complete with a cute little bonnet with a pink bow. I was the cutest teddy bear in the whole show, confirmed by my grandparents. Now, you've probably guessed the terrible secret that my mother has carried with her all these years. My amazingly cute teddy bear costume was Big Bear. She had murdered him, pulled out his insides, and cut off his head. She then cut off his face, attached a bow to his head, and made me wear his cold, dead, very cute, and fluffy teddy bear skin. I think she finally caved and confessed because she could no longer live with the guilt. I was, and still am, traumatized. Rip Big Bear, R.I.P. That was not the ending I was expecting. Look at me. I'm the Big Bear now. That is morbid. That's crazy. It was a complete plot twist. I have literally done nothing at work for a decade. I have a great job in Canada doing data entry and analytics. I would prefer not to give the field of work as it's fairly specific. $70K a year, benefits, whole 9 yards, really awesome. The confession is that all my info was pulled from standard Excel files made by other people. In my first month, I made a macro that pulls from 50 plus places on our shared drive and compiles a 5-page report daily. The email sends itself at random times around 2:30 every day, Monday through Friday. Everyone thinks I'm amazing at my job. I'm the laziest fork you'll ever meet. I'm almost done getting a VPN function approved that will allow me to work from home. When you eventually leave/retire, will you reveal your secret? Teach me. You know what? That's honestly based because, hey, you can't work your entire life. Live your life, man. And if you're smart enough to make a macro that does your job for you and you get paid $70,000 a year, brother, take that. Good for you. I made a Facebook meme page in high school that got the police involved. When I was in high school, I created a meme page that made fun of every teacher, student, and faculty there. Some of them were extremely offensive and were basically attacks on individuals. I just kept doing it for the lulz. Once the administration got a hold of it, they hired a private investigator to find the culprit. Luckily, I wasn't that stupid, so I made and uploaded all my memes from the library computer. I started making memes, making fun out of the bad administration in the investigation, which then escalated into a whole chase for me with the police involved. They threatened legal action, but since they couldn't find me, I just kept memeing my way through high school. During my graduation day, I posted one final meme that said that I just graduated and that the search team sucks. I think at that point, they had an idea it was me, but they never proved it. It feels good to finally let it out. Haha, I never told anyone. I had a fear for snitches. Kid at my high school did something very similar right when memes originally became popular, but was eventually caught and expelled. A cheap camera in the library could have solved this pretty quick. I'm pretty sure they could have easily tracked it by computer and time it was posted. I slapped a child in the face and then shoved him off his scooter. I'm 25. So I have a beloved kitty named Pixie. She was around 4 when I found her on the street. She had a rubber band tightened on half her tail. I spent 2 weeks feeding her until she was comfortable enough to let me near her. She didn't trust anyone. I took her in, cleaned her up, and got the dead portion of her tail amputated. After 5 years, she finally warmed up to people, and she became so sweet and friendly. It took her years to be comfortable around strangers. Last month, she was out for her daily stroll around the neighborhood and immediately came back in through the kitty door 20 minutes later. Usually, she is out and about for 2 to 3 hours. She had 2 small holes in her chest and 1 near her butt. She was completely frightened and was crying/meowing. She wouldn't even let me go near her for the first 5 minutes. I knew for certain that she was shot with metal BBs. I take her in my car and start driving to the vet, but took a quick detour around the neighborhood. I was going to take the long way to see if I could find the culprit. Sure enough, I see a kid on a scooter standing in his driveway with a CO2-powered BB gun, aiming in the drainage cavity by the sidewalk. I see cats in there all the time. It was then I knew who the culprit was. I parked the car, got out, walked over to him, and said, "I'm telling your parents that you're shooting cats." He replied, "They are pests. They told me I could." The smug little look on his face threw me over the edge. I slapped the frick out of this bee and kick-sweeped his legs out from under him and watched him fall flat on his ass. Then I picked up his gun and smashed it on the ground. A small part of me wanted to finish him off with a stomach kick for good measure, but I'm freaking 25. So I looked both ways before crossing the street and bolted. As I hopped in my car and sped away, I heard him shrieking in the distance. My kitty was treated and is doing okay. She is a lot more skittish and spends less time outside. They told me I could. Well, frick them too.